Hello and welcome to Cyber Life. My name is Ken Underhill, your host. In today's episode, we have a very special guest that's worked at a number of three-letter agencies. Our guest is Chip Harris, and he's worked in what we now call cybersecurity for a number of years. So Chip, I want to ask you, how do you even get started working with IT and security?
I am two generations of poor white trash tornado bait from Tupelo, Mississippi, where I was growing up and raised. I grew up in the intelligence community. The reason why I've got a blacked out mask is I'm actually operational right now for a couple three-letter agencies. So I have to basically disguise my identity, because there is facial recognition software and stuff out there that can dox you. So, that security is a very big thing for me. So this is not my first dog and pony show where I've had to, black out my, face and everything to talk because, I don't want the bad guys to win, and I don't believe throwing up some little pick, but I believe that, that you should be able to talk and engage people, like this. But I grew up in the intelligence community, did 18 years as a private military contractor, in Afghanistan, for a lot of three-letter agencies. Also worked with Halliburton, Saudi Aramco, Tyco Telecom, so forth, my father worked for the CIA and the NSA and the DOD and the DOJ, and I kind of followed the same route as to support the war effort, in 2000 when I got started, because I've been, working, in the IT cybersecurity community ever since I was basically a bench tech at CompUSA fixing computers, which most people don't even remember CompUSA. But, I started off, just as a regular bench tech and then became, server administrator, network administrator, and I was very big in the hacking community, that was around my area and, just got involved, and back then we didn't have certified ethical hacker. I mean, there was no such thing, there was no such thing as a SOC analyst, we had database administration, we had Fortran was still around at the time, so we and AS400s, so that's what we started, working on in these huge, gigantic reel-to-reel databases. And then over time, things progressed, started working in a server room as a server administrator. Then, after 9/11, I got very involved in the security community, and got very interested in that. And they threw me right into the fire. So I worked with the 501st Air Cav out of Fort Campbell, Kentucky, the Night Stalkers unit. So I was in the rear with the gear as an armed military contractor that worked with them in operations, for the better part of 18 years. These guys are very good, professional killers, because that's what they do. And they need IT and tech support just like everybody else for some of their missions and operations. And I did that. And then when I got hurt, I got shot twice, stabbed 3 times, and hit with an IED. So I got beat up pretty bad and decided to come back to the United States because, well, getting shot at was not on my top 10 list of things to doing anymore. So I was like, those days when I was younger, it was great. Now I'm getting older, it's like, I don't want to do this, so I came back to the United States and they were like, well, you got to finish out the contract. And I was like, well, what do you want me to do? And they're like, well, you're going to go investigate and work with the DEA and the DOJ to investigate the CLO and Juarez drug cartels. And I was like, great. Great. So I, for 2 years, went from hotel room to hotel room, and investigating and studying and helping track down 2.5 metric tons, of illicit drugs that come in the United States a day, that 20% of our population, ingest, and out of 100% of the opioids that are created, in the world, 80% is consumed by the United States. And these guys have basically a logistics operation that's bigger than FedEx and UPS combined that you don't ever see. It's all logistics. I mean, it's, they use Google Analytics just like everybody else. They use data centers and server rooms, counterintelligence, counter surveillance, and my job was to track down not only how they laundered their money through, different banks, but how do they move, 4 tons of cocaine, a month into the United States. So I worked on that, and also worked on the investigation of El Chapo, and with the Sinaloa cartel. and did. I was actually mentioned in the Panama Papers, which was kind of scary and kind of cool at the same time. And then came back after that contract was over and decided that, to do a little bit of contracting, in my local area, which I can't discuss where that is. But, did some of that and then started working with a company now as a private contractor with a company that's working with the NIH, the CDC, and HHS. So with OT and IT technologies right now. And I love it, enjoy it, love the team that I work with. And that's what's brought me here today to talk to you about and hypothesize and tell the good world about IT security, that's happening in OT and the need for OT security, operational technology versus IT technology, which we talk about in education all the time. And we talk about people need to get certified and all this kind of stuff. And I was at RSA 2 years ago and they're like, man, we need, 20% of all universities to start producing IT security people so we can keep up with China and Iran and Russia. Well, in OT, operational technology, SCADA-based systems, we're in the hundreds, and that's scary, because, as I tell people and, I explain to people, yeah, I can hack into a system and knock out a system and crash a server, woohoo, I can control alt delete it, bare metal it, bring it out, but you can't control alt delete a power system for an entire city. That's true dangerous kind of stuff when you start getting into OT technology and the power that you have behind this keyboard and this mouse to shut down industrial systems, lighting, water. I mean, and it's very, very scary stuff because these systems are old and they need to be updated. And if you know what you're doing, you can get in there and do some major damage to infrastructure across the United States and the world.
Wow, Chip, that's an interesting background. So you work in the critical infrastructure space these days. A lot of people mention the term OT. What is that for the audience that doesn't know what that is? What is OT?
You turn on the lights, congratulations, you just touched OT technology. That's power, right? So as I explain it to like a 5-year-old, it's basically water, light, electricity. If you're at a street light, congratulations, you got signals that are going off letting people traffic flow. That's SCADA based technology. That's OT technology. You drive by a power plant, that's OT technology. You look at a chemical plant, nuclear plant, water treatment facilities, congratulations, that's OT technology. So even in manufacturing, if you've got a warehouse, or a hospital, there's OT technology that's involved with that because they got elevators, escalators, right? They have HVAC, which is your air conditioning units and systems. Those are things that are, part of OT technology. Since I work in the medical field, and I deal with medical technology and dealing with the hacking of medical devices, that IV that's running into your arm that's plugged into the wall to, an RJ45 internet jack, congratulations, they're monitoring what medicines are going into your veins, right? So if I hack that and inject way too much into it, I could kill you. I could affect your health. So that's, one of the things that we look at, especially in OT technology, is how things are basically affecting the physical world. IT technology, in a sense, is basically affecting data. This is affecting reality. This is what crosses that barrier into the physical domain.
Well, thanks, Chip. So I did want to ask you, how do we secure OT and what's really the difference between OT and the more traditional IT security?
When you're looking at IoT, there's a couple of things we look at, and you can Google these, is the OST model, the mirror attack model, and we call the bow tie model, we look at, in IT, it's all about data, right? In OT, it's all about safety and security. That's the big change. You look at IT, you look at the CIA principles, right? The triad, confidentiality, integrity, and accessibility, right? In OT technology, it's completely different. It's all about, we don't care about the data. We care about the security. We care about the safety of the human being, So, you look at like OSHA standards, and stuff like that. Those things are put there for the reason being is like someone spills dry ice on the floor, right? There has to be a policy and a procedure to be able to get that dry ice off the floor, get it, away from people so that it doesn't get contaminated and it doesn't hurt other people, right? That's OT technology. OT technology, in a sense, is very old. It's about 30 years old. This is the stuff that's actually made by Siemens and Honeywell and all these other different manufacturers, ABB, that's put out there. They're meant to be used for 15 to 30 years, and these systems, some of them, kid you not, are still running on Windows XP, Service Pack 2. To give you an example of that, the Colonial Pipeline incident, where gas for 3 to 4 days was not able to go to, the West Coast and the East Coast, and through that pipeline, everybody freaked out. What happened? Gas prices went up. Humans by nature go insane and think that there's going to be a shortage, which there will never be a shortage of gas in the country, and be able to get into those systems affects the world, and affects human beings, and it affects, the outcome not only of the world, but it also pushes the panic meter, for some people. So OT technology, first off, you say to yourself, I want to get into OT technology. How do I do this? Well, it's one of those things you got to put your hands into. It's not something I can teach in a book. It's not something I can pour into your brain and you completely understand. You have to physically go out there and start working with OT technology. You have to learn about, how controllers work, G code, what a PLC does, and that's in a manufacturing based environment. So I tell people, go work, you're going to be working with, cogen, for example, cogeneration of power, which is a huge, cogens, if people don't know what they are huge jet engines. They're diesel electric, or jet engines that produce extra power for a company. So, if I slam on the brakes, that thing, if it's going 700 miles an hour, it's going to explode. And it's going to make a hole that's about 50 feet wide, 40 feet deep, and shoot, blades 2 miles up in the air. It's going to come raining down on people. So, OT technology, as I tell people, affects the real world. It's very dangerous, and you got to make sure that you know what you're doing, So it's one of those things that you have to practically get your hands into and onto after you graduate or you want to go into this. So you start working with a manufacturer, and most of us that have worked, in OT technology started off as like maintenance people, that have gotten into this, started learning the control systems, because they have a control room just like you do, behind you, that it's completely different than IT, so you have to understand what those systems do. So like if this sensor goes off, it's telling me, oh, there's not enough pH in the water, there's too much alkalinity, and it dumps, something in there to get it back to a base level. Well, you got to know about how that system works, right? Same thing. You need to know how power works, how steam works, how electrical works. So you get a lot of people that go into like electrical engineering. People that go into gas pipelines and understanding that. And that builds into those systems that are proprietarily based throughout those companies. So you might go to one company, they're 100% Siemens. You might go to another company, they're using a blend of Honeywell and other manufacturers, Bosch, and so forth out there. Snyder Electrical, for example, is in a lot of the different systems that are out there. So you need to learn those systems, so that you can start working on and building that knowledge base to start working in IT cybersecurity for that. And locking those things down is completely different than locking things down in OT, because latency is the killer. You have to have connectivity real time to a lot of these systems, because if they shut down, they go into a safe mode and stop. So guess what? You don't want that to happen, because that could cause something to explode or cause something to fail. And it's basically a domino effect in OT technology. So you have to really know what you're doing, and you have to be really careful for what you're doing. And you really have to work with your vendors and your manufacturers to make sure that you're doing the proper policies and procedures so no one gets hurt.
So, Chip, have you worked on any projects over the years that have kind of made you feel good? Like it gives you that warm, fuzzy feeling at all?
I've got some stuff that's declassified that I can talk about. Um, I've worked, exclusively with Idaho National Labs. I've worked with Oak Ridge National Laboratory, and I've worked with a lot of medical manufacturers. I worked with a medical manufacturer that makes pacemakers, for example. Pacemaker that my father has, in his heart, keeps his heart going. I came in and this company wanted me to test to see if pacemakers and insulin devices, for people that have insulin that are diabetic, if we could hack those devices. So there was a red team put together, and I was the leader of that red team and brought in some professionals. And within about 3 to 4 months, we were able to figure out how to hack into the pacemakers and figure out how to hack into the actual device, the device and the code and the signals, which these things produce signals into the not only the pacemaker, but into the insulin device that actually keeps people alive. So I could inject a ton of insulin into somebody and cause an insulin coma and death, or I could just turn your pacemaker off or speed it up, slow it down. So we found that vulnerability, reported it back to the manufacturer, which they were paying for us to be able to do this, and they fixed it. So it was a very, very great moment to find out, 60,000 people, could have been affected by this. But also the major reason that they wanted to do this was that the former Vice President Dick Cheney had this device that was on him to help regulate his heart before he had a heart transplant. So, it was something that it went to the highest levels of government to be able to help protect, the former vice president and as an individual, and my dad. So it was like, wow, I just saved my dad because this thing could have killed him. Someone could have, if they, for malicious intent, could have taken this and put this on the dark net and sold it for thousands of dollars. So we found this vulnerability. It got fixed. The manufacturer admitted it, and they said, come on in. We'll either replace it, if you want it replaced, or we can fix it for you, with the patches and the stuff that we had found out. And that was a really feel good moment, for the manufacturer and myself, that I'm reporting this back to a board of directors, and they're saying, we've got to do the right thing. And the right thing is admit our, fault, fix this issue, and make sure that we don't affect anybody's health and they die. So, that was a very good feel good moment for me. The other second one that we did that really, stands out in my mind was working with a medical manufacturer that was dealing with they have these huge gigantic systems. They're called like Epic and Cerner that are inside that take care of medical records, that take care of medical information. Your medical records are just like your credit score. I mean, everything in your life is inside medical records. And I worked with, two hospitals, one being the Maria Shriver Cancer Institute for Children that deals with blood-borne pathogens and cancer inside kids to help lock down their file systems, and lock down and come in and do a pen test and work the red team to find out exactly where all their flaws were. And they thought they were pretty secure. They had spent a couple $1 million, with a vendor to lock some of this stuff down. And we came in and, raise the, look behind the curtain, get into the systems, take a look, and then really, start doing system hardening, even at the base level, like at Active Directory level, like fix Active Directory, fix your roles, fix your tree, fix your, child parent relationship, all the stuff we learned in, server administration, fix your network. You need to have, level 2, level 3 next gen, routers and switches that would be able to do network, net flow detection and all this kind of stuff. Get to the edge, protect at the edge, protect the barrier. Two-factor authentication, we had to institute that. Same thing at the endpoint. We put in active AI-based machine learning, to be able to do this that would work with their SIM, so because they're spending a lot of money on these one product to do one thing. Well, that one product could actually do 4 things. So let's go ahead and maximize it for the best part for what you're spending your money for. And that was really good to kind of come in there, with a company that's like, hey, we think we're awesome and we've got all this kind of cool stuff and we spent all this money, to protect, blah, 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 blah. And we come in there and it's like, no, you've put all your eggs in one basket. We need to go ahead and break those eggs up, because guess what? Someone's going to come in and steal the golden goose egg that you've got here, which is your intellectual property and data that's based around kids, and you don't want that stolen, and you don't want that, cancer research stolen, so let's lock all this stuff down. So that's exactly what we did. It took 6 months to get it to happen, because people in politics and that goes with any of this stuff, and they were very willing to work with the company that I was representing and contracting with at the time to get that stuff fixed.
All right, Chip, I know you're a fan of buzzwords out there, especially the marketing buzzwords. We hear terms like red team, blue team, purple team, yellow team. I've seen gray team, all these different colors, it seems like, of the rainbow. What is the difference for those watching this? What's the difference between red team and blue team?
We have every color of the damn rainbow. I'm going to try to be nice about this and not get too profane, but there's a lot of marketing verbiage that's used that's total crap. Okay. There will always be black hats, gray hats, and white hats. Okay. Congratulations. Once you know those colors, they're all the same, right? Red team does attacking, blue team does defending, purple team is more of the C level up to the A level people, in the executive branch that get the report, that want to hear 30 minutes of good, and 10 minutes of bad, so it's, and then they say, oh, there's a yellow team. What the fuck is a yellow team? I'm going to just put it that way. There's an orange team. What the hell is an orange team? So, there's legal, there's marketing. It's like, and they put all these colors into it. I'm like, what is this, Skittles? It makes no sense to me. This is crap. Okay. So what is the job? What do you want done? You could call it whatever you need to call it. Pen testing, gray hat hacking, you can call it interdepartmental, network scanning. I don't care, whatever you label it is label it, but what actually you're looking for is, what am I doing for the job, or the contract? What am I doing to try to produce, liable, credible information and look for vulnerabilities, and stuff that would be able to affect the company? And then 3, what is the output to be able to get that change done, to be able to help secure the set data, which is the intellectual property, which is your commodity. Your data is your commodity. So that's one of the things that, I see that's all thrown around LinkedIn and Indeed, and, must work, must be a level 2 SOC analyst for 3 to 5 years and worked on a blue team. So basically it means you know how to do incident response. Okay, that's good enough for me. That's what it tells me. Oh, I need a red teamer that knows how to use Burp Suite. Okay, that means it tells me that you've done ethical hacking. I mean, it's ridiculous to me, how the marketing verbiage and all this is actually used, now, considering that I've been doing this, 26 years, a lot of this stuff didn't even exist, and they've just spun it up into some kind of naming schema for marketing and selling certs.
Well, thanks for explaining that, Chip. So there's a big debate usually, especially on social media. Do I get certification? Should I get college degrees? What should I get really to get my IT security or cybersecurity career started? What's your perspective as a hiring manager? Do you care about certs or degrees for someone on your team?
I'll give you an example here. I've got 30 Microsoft certifications, 17 CompTIA certifications. I have actually right now been writing for a textbook, so that will actually be in a educational program for the University of Arizona. So, I've been a contributor for that project for almost 2 years now. All the content that I've created will be used in a degree-based program. So I had to learn what's a certification-based program that just gets you certs, right? Versus a university that gets you an actual degree, that has a feeder channel into like the FBI, the CIA, the NSA, the DOD, right? So that's one of the main things the university wanted to do, and the accreditation that goes for that, right? So, and also I've been working with, I've never had to meet a copyright lawyer or, anything. I had to go through all that. So all the information that I was created was considered to be, original, and not general knowledge, specific knowledge for writing to a topic, right? So that's what I look for, when I look at a resume or something. But I've also got, for example, one guy that's on my team, he has long black hair with purple tips. He's got 4 nose rings. He sings in a Norwegian death metal band. And he is, I mean, built like Henry Rollins meets, a wrestler. He's huge guy, nice as could be. Tattoos on his throat, tattoos all over his arms, his knuckles, everything. But he has 34, Cisco certifications and is a high school GED graduate, right? And he can do anything when it comes down to networking. I mean, he can do subtables in his brain. I mean, it's unreal. The guy is a, calculator when it comes down to dealing with network and network security, and they're like, why do you want to hire this guy? I'm like, he can do anything with a network. He can do anything, I don't really care about his background. I don't care what he looks like. Can he do the job for what I'm going to hire him to do or for what we need to do? And the answer to that is yes. The same thing as we interviewed a returning veteran, from Afghanistan, which I'm very big on, making sure that veterans have jobs when they come back. The guy was a sniper, he was a military sniper, very minimal IT, security experience, was breaking into the field and whatnot. And they said, why do you want to hire this guy? Because he's just now getting into this. I said, he's a former military sniper. No matter what we tell him to do, he will do it. And he will do it with maximum efficiency like you have never seen before. And, he started off pretty rough, but now he's one of the best ones on my team. Great leader, has responsibility, knows how, to type. That's one of the key things is we look for. Well, we push a lot of paper in the government. So guess what? You need to know your verbiage, the King's English. He's got all of that down. I mean, and no matter what I ask him to do, it is done with an extreme efficiency, like someone is threatening his life, like someone has a gun to his child's head and is going to pull the trigger. He will do whatever I need him to do because I understand that he's got discipline. He's got motivation. He has the ability to learn. He has the ability to listen. He has the ability to, learn on the job and make changes and then be able to study. And the key thing, read. You got to be able to read a lot of these white papers and a lot of these journals and a lot of the stuff that comes out in the medical field to understand, what these doctors and stuff want, because they're doctors. We're technologists. Okay. They don't ever meet. Same thing. IT and OT should never be blended. They should be completely separate. So, that is one of the things that we have to deal with when we're dealing with technology, because not only are you dealing with IT and computers and servers, networks and data centers and whatnot, in my world, you're also dealing with power generation. You're dealing with elevator systems. You're dealing with, how the building is controlled and maintained, how the, medical devices are connected to the network. For example, you should never in an environment have commingling of IT and OT systems. They should be completely air gapped and completely away from each other. So, my team, that's what we do. We make sure that those things don't touch each other, right? We make sure they're separated. And we also make sure that they're safe and secure. That is our jobs, as we plan to do. And I've got some really great, black hats that work for me. I've got some really good red teamers that are on my team because, they're ex-military. They might look like they're a rock, a guy that sings in a Norwegian death metal band has a very deep, gravelly kind of voice. Yeah, but he is one of the nicest people you'll ever meet, but he looks like he could rip you in half, So, the perception is nothing. And now in the world that we are with COVID, everybody's remote, right? So guess what? I don't care what you look like. I don't care if your camera's on. Can you do the job? As long as you have internet connection and Teams and Outlook and email services and whatever, the work still gets done. It's very rare that we actually, that as I say, the band gets back together. It's very rare that we are all physically in with each other because we're all dispersed throughout the United States. And that's a great thing because I can get talent from anywhere. and that's a good thing, and for people that are graduating college or they're trying to get into this field and whatnot, it's really dependent on how you want to, market yourself, how you really want to go into this field. Do you want to be a server administrator? Do you want to be a SOC analyst? Do you want to be a pen tester? Do you want to be an ethical hacker? Whatnot. There's tons of different flavors of stuff that you can choose from. In OT technology, it's a little bit harder because you're dealing with manufacturing based systems, that are very proprietary, that are very hard to learn. It's not easy by any means. And then on top of that, you're taking your IT and your security skills and throwing that in there, and that's really where the mix comes into being. And it's very hard to do. I'm not going to tell you it's going to be easy, but I'm going to tell you it will be worth it.
All right, Chip, critical question now. You're stranded on a desert island. You can only pick one food. What are you picking?
I lived overseas in the Asian countries for a long time. There's nothing wrong with badogi. I love badogi, love Korean food, seared, beef and whatnot. Sushi, ozawa, konnichiwa. It's like, we have we are a cat family. We have a lot of cats in our house. We have 5. So we have one fat cat, and every time he tries to eat my sushi when we get sushi and everything. So, his name is Winston. So with Winston, we call him Sumo Winnie. I am Sumo Winnie. I am Big Kitty. I like your sushi. So if I'm on desert island, I want the buffet of sushi.
All right, Chip, so if someone's watching this episode right now and they're saying to themselves, all right, this cybersecurity stuff, it sounds kind of cool. Like Chip's making me feel excited. I want to wear a mask like Chip is right now. How do they get started in cybersecurity? Like, where should they start at?
For me, it was a little bit different because, I was, there was a war, one of the longest wars we have fought in in the United States history. And if you look at the history of the United States, we've been at war for like 200 something years. I mean, it's like, and this is the first time that, within the past 4 to 8 years that we've actually had peace. The war has ended. We have left Afghanistan. We have left, a lot of the theaters of war. We are now in a control and maintain state. When I started, it was complete chaos. I mean, we just had 2 planes hit the, World Trade Center. They came tumbling down, and, everybody, they needed, cyber intelligence people by the dozen. I mean, it was just because it wasn't there. We just had the creation of Joint Cyber Command, and we just had the creation of JSOC. So, I was there when it all began, and I tell people that if you really want to get into IT cybersecurity, there's 2 ways you can go. You can go the government route. You can join the military, which they are hiring every day, and you can specialize into going into cybersecurity that way. Because the military has all the cool toys, and they can get to break all the laws, and they can do whatever they want. They can do attack and defensive warfare. They can do counterintelligence, counter surveillance. The list goes on and on and on. And I worked in that, for the better part of 18 years. So, I mean, I was in that environment, from day one, from the beginning, just snap here. We got to, hire you. How much do you want an hour? Come on in, we'll get you trained, whatnot. I went through about 2.5 weeks of, weapons training. I went through about a month and a half of cybersecurity training and whatnot, and I had a security plus. That's the only cert I ever had, coming straight out. And then, within 6 months, it was like A plus, Linux plus. I mean, they started just pumping information into you. And I was a sponge. I mean, I was very young at the time. I was just soaking it up, and I was like, give it to me. Because, I remember being poor. I grew up, in a, when you grow up in a trailer, and you look at where you live and you look at the instances, and poor has no color. It doesn't matter. You can be hot pink, blonde, plaid, alien, asexual, gay, straight, doesn't matter. Poor is poor. You're on the same level. And I said, I don't want to go back to having to choose between being poor and the environment I grew up in and be able to better myself, because knowledge is power. I met some really good old salts, old timers, that had been in, that had seen more theater of war than I had, that trained me, and I listened, and it was like, if you don't want to go back to that, you need to learn this, because whatever happens to you, this will never go away. This knowledge will never come out of you never lose it. You just retain it. And I was like, sweet. So they just kept pumping information into me. Search, learn about Microsoft, learn about Linux, learn about, GUI interfaces, learn about counterintelligence, learn about the hardware, learn about surveillance software, so forth. So that was pumped into me. The second way of doing this is you need to sit down with yourself and say, I'm going to dedicate my life to this, because me being me and being super hyper competitive, super, I have to put my job first. My wife and my family had to understand that no matter what I do, this is the essential part of me. And I'm going to sacrifice time, effort, and energy to put this first. And I hate to say that, but that's true, because 3:00 in the morning when something goes wrong, this phone rings, I pick it up, I've got to do something. I'm on. The game's on. And you have to sacrifice that. So you have to say to yourself, I'm going to sacrifice time, effort, and energy in my life to do this. What do I want to do? Do I want to be a SOC analyst? Do I want to be, a red teamer? I want a blue teamer. Do I want to work on, systems administration? Do I want to be a CISO? Do I want to run a team, like a red team or a blue team? Do I want to, work in, the C-level suite? What kind of education, what kind of search, what do I have to do? You have to sit down and map that out for yourself, because the only person that's going to be able to do it is you. I can't do it for you. You can't do it for people that listen to this podcast. I hope that they learn that, this stuff is not easy. It never has been. It never will be. The technology changes, but guess what? The motivation has to be there, to learn this stuff. Because it is not simple. It is not easy. The pay is great. You can make a very good established living doing this, depending on what it is that you want to do, right? And if you say, I want to make over six figures, and I want to be able to travel the world, or I want to be able to work from home, or I want to be able to you've got to figure that out exactly where your niche is going to be. Okay. And I found mine. Mine's in the medical industry and the banking industry, because I know those systems very well. I've worked in them for years, and I've also worked in manufacturing for a long period of time. So I understand SCADA-based systems. I've worked with, cities and governments and everything to help them, safely secure nuclear facilities, power facilities, water treatment facilities. For example, I've worked with TVA, Tennessee Valley Authority, to help them lock down, a lot of their, systems, so that people don't go in there and from a state nation or a nation state, however you want to put it, and basically knock out the power for the East Coast or the West Coast or Central, or poison the water. So those, my job is to think of very bad things that hackers can do and stop them. And then you sacrifice a lot of time and a lot of effort and energy to do that. So, as I tell people, this job is a dedication. It is something that will affect your life. And there are a lot of mental things that come with this, mental facility, capacity that you have to give up, because some of the things that we see are not pretty. I've worked, state and federal cases for child pornography, human trafficking. I've worked murder cases, murder for hire cases. I've worked with the Department of Justice on some very, very high level, crimes, and especially when I was in Mexico, the Mexicans are, and I hate to say this, the cartels and everybody, they are addicted to murder. And it is not pretty at all. And having to see a lot of those things, that sticks with you. So there is also help. There's, hackers for mental health, that help this, because sometimes this is a very, isolated job. It's very singular. Sometimes there's not a lot of communication between you and the real world, and you can get sucked into it, and it can basically destroy your life if you let it. So you have to really sit down with yourself and say, I'm going to dedicate my life to doing this, like a doctor does, or a lawyer does, or a judge, or anybody, it doesn't matter what the profession is. And you have to say, I want to do everything in my power and do it the best I possibly can, so that I can make, not only a change in this world, but to better my life.
That's some great information, Chip. So again, thanks for coming on today. A lot of great information, a lot of advice you shared. I want to ask you any final thoughts or advice for those watching the episode out there?
So my thoughts are is that this is a very open field right now for OT technology, and it's changing rapidly. And we need more cybersecurity people, not only in IT. I will never bash that, ever, ever, ever. We need good IT security people. We need people to listen, help be able to make change. We need to, be able to educate, people about cybersecurity. We always need to be able to learn and read about new things because, we've got, in my lifetime, I've seen quantum computers. Holy crap. That is amazing. I've seen the birth of AI from, MIT to now being used across the world, for big data lakes. It's unreal some of the stuff that I've seen within the past 5 years that's happened. It changes. Moore's law is right out the window. It's just, everything has just changed so rapidly, and we're expanding on technology and it's growing so much. And there's so much to learn and so much to be out there. But there's also huge, massive gaps when it comes down to not only our programming and development, our DevOps, and our secure coding, but it also builds into our OT technology that really needs to be protected. We really need to take a look at these systems and update them, make them better, more secure, because when people come like Iran or China or the Russians to kill us, the first thing that they're going to do is they're going to cut the power. Okay. So I'm going to give you a hellscape scenario. One of the things I think of, if someone cuts the power to the West Coast for a week, turns off the internet, turns off the water, the power, the electrical, and the sewage, guess what? We are three full meals from anarchy. That is just that is human nature. And then when that stuff starts to happen, we start having major problems. So we really need people that want to get into OT technology, and really start teaching that, at the university and at the vocational level, because guess what? This is stuff that you would learn at a vocational level or a vocational college, because guess what? Those things are what you're going to have to get your hands into, and people are like, well, I don't want to do that. That takes too long. Well, it takes about a good, 4 to 8 years to really break into any IT, market. I don't care who you are. If you're just starting out, you're looking at between, 4 to 6 years to where you're making, first off, really good money, only unless you get super duper lucky. Plus what you've got to learn, what you've got to get the experience in. And then on top of that, though, too, is that, you have to look at that. Is that going to go away, or is it going to get bigger? Right. So it's kind of like, well, do I want to invest in, laser disc, or do I want to invest in, something that's going to be, streaming media, from the internet? Well, guess who's going to win? It ain't going to be laser disc. It's going to be streaming media, because guess what? That was the future, right? No one can predict that. No one can see that coming. But you really need, and what we really need is people to educate themselves in, exactly what field they want to get into, what level of cybersecurity that they want to get into. Do they want to get into, industrial-based security? Do they want to get in water treatment, security, whatnot? And then focus on those things, and then just put 110% effort and energy into it, no matter what, and learn as much as you possibly can. And I guarantee you, you will have a wonderful career in this that will never go away. Because guess what? The power's got to be on. So does the water, the light, the electrical, and the sewage. That's not going away anytime soon, So really think about that when you're looking at as a career choice to get into those things. And the other thing, though, too, is that know your limits. Know what it is that you can and can't do. I'm not a developer. I'm not a programmer. I can't throw stuff on the screen and magically make it happen. I'm just not that. Sorry. I can use PowerShell and I can use command line, and whatnot, and get what I do. I'm a script kiddie. I admit it, so there you go. I'm not the best at those wonderful things. So I know what my limits are. The other thing, though, too, is in the corporate world, I really don't have a filter. I yell, scream, cuss, throw things, hoot and holler, and I normally have to have somebody in front of me because I'm an HR nightmare. You know, I promised myself that I would never, ever, ever again work in a cubicle. You know, that is my goal in life, is not to ever work in a cubicle, because, you know, what we do and talk about, you know, does not need to be talked around the water cooler. And, you know, cubicle walls are very thin, you know, especially when we're dealing with security, you know, even if it's, you know, corporate espionage and turtle theft, you know, investigating things that happen, you know, in and out the network. That does not need to be talked about in a public environment, let's just put it that way. So you know, as I tell people, so, you know, like, my goal in life is, you know, to work remote forever, because, you know, I have everything that I need here, you know, in my lab and in my pen testing lab. You know, I love working from home. I love working remote. You know, I love being able to do stuff like we're doing now with your podcast. You know, this is great. You know, I would not be able to do this in a corporate environment, you know, in a cubicle, you know. So as I tell people, you know, you know, what do you want to do with your career? Where do you want it to go? How do you want these things, you know, to affect your life? You know, is it affecting your life, your personal or your physical life? Because, you know, we sit down a lot. We really do. You know, exercise is key. Eating good meals, you know, Cheeto dust does not make the keyboard work any better, kids. So, you know, you know, make sure you exercise, eat a good balanced meal, get 8 hours of sleep, you know, because guess what? You know, it never goes away. And especially doing what I do, it takes a very big toll on your life, because, you know, you have to keep these systems up and running all the time. It's the 5 nines all the way. So, you know, as my final thoughts are, please, 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 if you're getting into this market and you're thinking about these things, do your research. There is so much out there on the internet to research and figure out exactly what you want to do. There's so much on YouTube, there's so much on Instagram, there's so much on social media to figure out exactly like what niche it is that you want to go into, to be able to do this. Because guess what? It's a great field. It's an awesome field. There are some caveats that come with it. I think I've expressed those, you know, during this podcast, and especially with you. There are some dangers, you know. So, you know, like I tell people, don't go try to hack the CIA. That's a bad day. When they show up, you know, to arrest you, it's not going to be good, you know, so keep it legal, you know, and also figure out, you know, what do you want to do? My mark hopefully will be to help improve cybersecurity for the medical field, you know, in the banking industry, because people will always steal, people will always get sick. I really want to make sure that those things are locked down, because I really want to be able to protect your, you know, PHI, EPHI, and PCI, you know, and make sure that you live a wonderful life. And guess what? I don't ever want you to know who I am, or for you ever to see me. Because as I've told people before, if I show up at your door, you've done something to put me there.
Well, thanks again, Chip, for coming on the show. You shared a ton of good information in today's episode. Be sure to follow the Cyber Life on LinkedIn, and also follow us on our YouTube channel. And of course, download the Binge Network's app so you can watch the Cyber Life and binge watch the show. We look forward to seeing you in the next episode.